All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're essentially drawing up the blueprint of Nigeria's federal legislature, the National Assembly.
I mean, just think about that for a second. How on earth does a nation with over 200 million people actually make its laws? How do you take all those different voices, all those needs, and turn them into rules that work for everyone? Well, the secret? It's all in the structure. And at the very heart of that structure is one key institution, the National Assembly. This is pretty much the legislative engine of the entire country. Okay, so what does it actually do? Well, you can boil it down to three really big jobs. First, they make the laws, the rules we all live by. Second, they control the purse strings. They're the ones who have to approve the federal budget. And third, they act as a watchdog, keeping a close eye on the executive branch to make sure everyone's staying in line. But why is it built this way? What's the big idea? It all comes down to this one core principle: preventing any single person or group from getting way too much power. The entire system is meant to be a balancing act, one that's designed for thorough debate and careful thought.
And this idea of balance, it's not just a nice theory. It's literally built into the architecture of the National Assembly by splitting it into two distinct chambers.
The fancy word for this is bicameralism, and all that means is that the legislature is split into two parts. And trust me, this isn't just for appearances. Each part has a very specific and very important job to do.
So first up, you've got the Senate. It's made up of 109 members. And then you have the second chamber, the House of Representatives, which is a lot bigger. We're talking 360 members. So you got to ask, right? Why the huge difference in numbers?
Well, this is where that whole idea of balance really clicks into place. See, the Senate gives every single state an equal voice, 3 senators from each of Nigeria's 36 states, plus 1 from the FCT. It doesn't matter how big or small a state's population is. But the House of Representatives? That's all about population. More people means more representatives. So you see the genius in that? The Senate looks out for the interests of the states, while the House looks out for the interests of people in their specific local areas. It's this incredible push and pull between regional and popular concerns. Okay, so we've got the two houses, but how does this whole legislative machine actually build our laws? How do these two chambers, with their totally different jobs, come together to get things done?
The really detailed nitty-gritty work, it happens here, in committees. You can think of these as the real engine room of the legislature. They're these smaller, specialized groups that just dig into the technical details of a bill, investigate complex issues, and listen to what the public has to say. This is where the heavy lifting of lawmaking actually happens.
So how does a simple idea become the law of the land? It has to follow this path. First, a bill is introduced. Then, its main principles get debated. After that, it's sent off to one of those committees for that deep dive we just talked about. Then, a final version is reviewed, and it's put to a vote. But here's the crucial part: showing that balance at work again. For most bills, this entire process has to happen successfully in both the House and the Senate. And to make sure all these votes and debates are actually legitimate, there's a rule called a quorum. Basically, you can't make any big decisions unless a certain number of members, at least 1/3 of them, are actually present. It's a really important safeguard to make sure laws are passed with proper representation. So, we've looked at the architecture, we've seen the rules, the whole process, but where do you, the citizen, fit into this pretty complex picture? And that's a fair question, right? With all these procedures and hundreds of lawmakers, it can be really easy to feel like your voice just gets lost in the noise. But the system is actually designed for you to have some input. So how do you make sure you're heard? Well, you have some real tools you can use. You can submit formal petitions on issues you're passionate about. You can show up to those public hearings that committees hold. You can contact your representative directly at their local office. And of course, the most powerful tool you have, your vote.
And you should never forget this. Every single one of those 469 legislators represents a constituency. That's a specific area with specific voters, communities, and interests. They are meant to be your direct link to the whole lawmaking process. Their job is to represent you, your community, and what you care about.
So, we've walked through the blueprint. We can see the checks and balances, the way it represents both states and people, and the ways you can get involved. The architecture is there. The final question, the one we all have to think about, is this: how effectively is it actually being used to build the nation?